Boardwalk Empire TV show review. So this is part of my television addiction series in which I talk about TV shows that I watched in the years 2011 and 2012 when I was living in Cambodia and was watching way too many DVD series. For more information on exactly what this is and why I'm doing it, you can look at the videos linked in the description down below. But on to Boardwalk Empire. Now, it would be interesting to compare maybe in the comments what your experience of this TV show was. My experience is when this was actually on the air, especially when it was new, the first couple seasons, everybody was talking about it. Everybody was watching it. Everybody was talking about it. I find now, though, that in my circle of friends, it's been quite some time since I've heard anyone mention this TV show. In other words, my subjective impression is that it was quite popular when it was on the air, and then seems to have been largely forgotten about since it's gone off the air. I mean, people still remember it. If you ask them about it, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I remember that," but nobody's talking about it anymore. It's not become a classic, in other words. Or I don't know, maybe I'm just hanging out with the wrong crowd. Let me know what your impression is or what your friends are talking about. I was looking it up on the internet just now, and apparently it got low ratings even when it was on the air, even when it was a new show. But that was not my subjective impression. My friends and coworkers were quite taken with this show, and everybody was talking about it on Friday night drinking nights, and everybody was talking about it at the office and stuff like that. So, if you're not familiar with this show, I guess I'm going to drop some spoilers here. It's loosely based on real history. It's based on a guy. What was the name of the guy? Sorry, I've got the Wikipedia page open here. So it's loosely based on a real character, Enoch Lewis Johnson, who was known as Nucky. And it was played by Steve Buscemi, of course. He's a big-name actor. This is one of the famous examples of a big-name movie star who has gone into a TV production. And they fictionalized him just enough so that they had to change his name. It was Nucky Thompson in the TV series. This TV series got a lot of publicity at first because the pilot episode was directed by Martin Scorsese. Of course, is famous for his gangster films. And this is a fictionalized portrayal of the gangsters and politicians during Prohibition. So the character in this TV series, loosely based on a real person, is the mayor of Atlantic City, New Jersey, who is a politician, but he's a corrupt politician back in the days of the big political machineries of corrupt politician who is bootlegging and profiting off of Prohibition and has all these ties to the mob. And everything is fictionalized, but everything is loosely based on real history. So as you're watching it, various gangsters will pop up, and then you go to Wikipedia to look them up, and you can actually look up the bio and say, oh, okay, so this person really did exist, and I can see this event here is somewhat related to what they were showing in that episode. And if you're a history nerd like I am, especially if you're a lazy history nerd that gets most of their information from Wikipedia and television dramas, then that aspect of it can be quite fun. Al Capone starts out as a minor character in season 1. He's a minor character in part because he's all the way over in Chicago, and most of the drama is taking place in Atlantic City, New Jersey, although there's various connections to other places. But also then because Al Capone is just kind of slowly rising as the series goes through. I actually only watched it through seasons 1 and 2. I stopped watching after season 2, but I've heard via friends and via Wikipedia that Al Capone takes even a more prominent role in later seasons. There's also some tie-ins with some other interesting things which were going on in that era. The lost generation coming back from World War I and the various deformities or injuries or post-traumatic stress syndrome, although they would not have used that word at the time. The lost generation. And 1921 or 1920, 1921 is, of course, the Irish Rebellion. So there's what's going on in Ireland during that period. And that's integrated into the storyline, especially in season 2. They go over in that. And I'm sure all of it's quite loosely based on history, but it's there. It's interesting little nods. I found it interesting. Okay, now to the criticisms. I actually stopped watching after 2 seasons. And I reviewed The Walking Dead previously. The Walking Dead, I stopped watching in the middle of season 2. For this particular drama, I actually made it all the way through the first 2 seasons and was between seasons and waiting for the DVDs to drop for season 3 out in Cambodia. And then just got distracted by other things and never picked up season 3. So all of which is to say, I didn't hate it. I had fully intended to continue on with season 3 when I got done with season 2. But then just in the gap between when seasons came out, I just got distracted. I decided I wasn't addicted to the show. So it's a good show, but I wasn't addicted to it. And it had my main criticism of it. I've got 2 criticisms. Actually, one criticism is there was just a lot of sappy soap opera type drama that just bored me. There's the character of James Darmody and his tumultuous relationship with his wife, which just bored me, a lot of soap opera stuff. There was the main character, Nucky, and he had a relationship with an Irish woman he was taking care of, and that whole soap opera element just bored me. And then there's the government agent, Van Elden, and his strained relationships with his wife. And that just bored me. So there was a lot of interesting gangster stuff in here, but there was also all this boring soap opera type stuff, and that bored me. The other thing, I'm going to contradict myself slightly. I said there was a lot of interesting gangster stuff in here, but in my opinion, this show over-relied on shocking violence as a way to increase the drama or as a way to increase interest. Now, I know you're thinking, shocking violence. You can't possibly have too much shocking violence. The more shocking violence, the better. I mean, in terms of how entertainment works. So you would think, but it's possible to overplay your hand at it. And this TV series, at least for me, is a classic example of how you would overplay your hand at it to the point that it just becomes boring. So what was very common in this TV series, so common, is they would have 2 people talking and the conversation would be perfectly normal. There would be a little bit of tension, but nothing to indicate anything is going to go terribly violent. And then out of nowhere, a character will just pull out his gun and shoot the other one. And then sometimes it turned out that was just an impulsive thing, and sometimes he had been planning to shoot him all along, as it was later revealed. But it was just such a common scene in this film series. And you do that a few times judiciously, and you can really increase the tension because you're like, well, okay, you do not know what is going to happen in this show. At any second, a gun could come out and someone could get killed. And that could be a really good way to increase the tension in certain situations. But if you do that all the time, then it becomes predictable. And then you get to a situation in which at just any given minute, sorry, that's the baby crying in the other room. I'm gonna take this into the other room here to try and get some peace and quiet. This is why I only film 1 video a week nowadays. It's just very difficult to get any peace and quiet in this apartment to film any videos. I do what I can. Okay, coming through here. If you do it all the time, then it takes away that dramatic tension, because then you're expecting it. Then you're like, oh, all right, they're talking. Someone's going to get shot suddenly sometime in this conversation. And the more you expect someone to just pull their gun out of nowhere and shoot someone, then it completely takes away that tension. And I got to the point where I was just bored with people suddenly getting shot out of nowhere. I just come to expect it. And I think much more people get shot in this drama than probably in real history. I mean, I know these gangsters were vicious in the 1920s, but I think if you actually go through and read the historical accounts of these gangsters, they were notorious for killing like 6 people or something like that. They didn't kill like 10 people in one episode, every episode. Okay, it's a TV show. They're hyping up the violence. You go along with that, and then they go over to Ireland and they're making deals with the IRA, and then the IRA are just all of a sudden assassinating each other. There's some sort of turnover in power while they're there, where one character just gets suddenly shot as they're leaving a place. And I'm thinking, all right, I know the IRA was a violent organization, but that seems to be a little bit hyped up, that they're just all of a sudden assassinating each other out of nowhere as a way to negotiate power. I don't know, but maybe they did, but it just felt like it was fitting into a cliched pattern with this series. Now, if you've seen all the way to season 2, there's going to be a major spoiler here that I'm going to reveal if you haven't seen it. End of season 2, the character of James Darmody gets shot. And again, what's supposed to be another shocking, out of nowhere, you're not expecting it. They're just talking, and all of a sudden he pulls out the gun and shoots them. And that one, to a certain extent, works as a shocker. I mean, it's a little bit strange because so much of season 1 and season 2 were building him up as a protagonist. So you were expecting to follow his storyline throughout the next seasons. So in one sense, it's a little strange. In another sense, that kind of strangeness makes that twist all the more unexpected and all the more powerful. And again, just talking about my circle of friends, I remember being out drinking one night, and one of the guys was like talking about how much that shocked him and how he had not expected that. And, it made quite an impression on my circle of friends. I was shocked by it as well, but I was also, I know this was at a different level because it was one of the main characters of the series, but still I'm like, okay, it's another character who just gets shot in a shocking way. And then when season 3 came out, I just never bothered to follow up with the series. I had all the best of intentions, but just never bothered with it, and don't really have any big regrets about it. Like I said, it was it was okay, but it bored me at parts. But this is once again another case where I am out of step with my coworkers. So again, my coworkers were saying, It's the best series ever. Loved it so much. They couldn't agree with me when I said I'd stopped watching it. And when I tried to explain to them my theory about how much gratuitous violence gets boring after a while, they did not accept that. They said, no, the series is great. It's so shocking. It's so entertaining. So once again, take my opinion with a grain of salt, because I am out on my own on this. My friends and coworkers did not agree with me. And let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy this series? What are your memories of it? And we can compare notes in the comments.